I want to talk about the nature of our system, which is ethylene oxide flexible chamber systems. Again, ethylene oxide has been around for 60 years. We approached FDA with this technology about 10 years ago. And as you can see at the very bottom of the slide there, since 2015, we have obtained 18 FDA 510K clearances on sterilization-related equipment. In that sense, the ethylene oxide flexible chamber system is one of the newest sterilizers to be reviewed and cleared by FDA. Ethylene oxide has a long history. Flexible chamber systems are quite new. And going back to ethylene oxide in general, this has not been a static technology. Again, in the 1960s, you had tank systems that were using 50-pound tanks, and not just one. They would have an entire storage room full of these 50-pound tanks. They leaked, so the storage room had to be ventilated. With time, in the 1980s, a company, 3M, developed a cartridge-based system that was a dramatic improvement. Instead of a 50-pound tank using 3 or 4 pounds of gas per cycle, suddenly you're using only 170 grams per cycle. These metal cartridges also leaked. The manufacturer recommended ventilated storage. And if you were working in a department, you would have ethylene oxide monitors go off if the ventilation was not effective. What we have done with our recent system, with the flexible chamber system, is reduce that further. We're using only 17.6 grams of gas per cycle. And you can see here the steady evolution in the efficiency of ethylene oxide. This has not been a static technology. As I said, the early methods of storing ethylene oxide, the tanks and the cartridges, all leaked. We are taking ethylene oxide and we are flame sealing it into glass ampules. Flame sealing ethylene oxide into glass is the only way that we've discovered to truly contain this amazing chemical. Because we're flame sealing the ethylene oxide in glass, you don't need ventilated storage. Again, we're using so little gas that we are completely exempted from all of the requirements of NFPA 55, which is the National Fire Prevention Association's guidance on ethylene oxide. At the very start, it says, yeah, we don't care about systems that are using less than 200 grams of gas. We're using only 17. With our systems, you are sterilizing and aerating in the same chamber. I didn't bring this up as a con, but again, if we had hospital people here who are now department managers, and they had been using some of these tank-based systems, they were the ones who had to open the chamber door, remove products that were still off-gassing, and move them to a separate aerator. And you got a snootful of ethylene oxide while you were doing that. With today's system, you don't touch products until they're fully aerated. There we go. Environmental. We've been calling this a zero emission system. In fact, we are releasing a fraction of a gram of ethylene oxide per cycle when you use one of our abaters. Because we're using so little gas, we're able to use a very simple dry bed technology. It's a dry resin bed. There is no potential ignition source, and it's very, very effective. As I've told many people in the audience, we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to sell sterilizers here in California since forever, and we still have a fairly large number here in the South Coast Air Quality District and up in San Francisco. We have sterilizers in all 50 states, and we're very proud of the fact that as far as environmental concerns, we are as close to zero as anybody has gotten so far. So how do we do it? The key to the flexible chamber system is the flexible chamber. It's a sterilization bag, and the sterilization bag is loaded with the items that you're going to sterilize. It's sealed around a purge device, and at the start of the cycle, The purge device removes the air from the bag. The bag, which is the chamber, collapses around the items that you're sterilizing. You can think of a vacuum-sealed bag of coffee, the way that the packaging, really contorts around the product. Well, it's the same thing here. There is no dead space, and so when you activate the gas cartridge, you get a very high gas concentration with a very small amount of gas. The sterilization bag is operated inside of a cabinet that is under constant negative pressure. It acts like a dedicated vent hood. So throughout the cycle, if there are any leaks, if there are any problems, the sterilization cabinet draws that off. This is a belt and suspenders approach. We call it a chamber inside a chamber, but this provides a high degree of confidence that you're not going to end up with gas in the workplace. Again, very different from any other system that came before. In terms of space, again, this is a very, very different system. The system that we have cleared by FDA is a tabletop sterilizer. Very significantly, it's a self-contained system. Unlike earlier ethylene oxide systems, there are no water lines, there are no compressors. This is easy to set up, easy to install, easy to operate. It'll fit into pretty much any department at this point, taking up very little space. So, on the subject of industrial use, these are some of our larger industrial cabinets. They also operate with the same sterilization bag method. These have got a 10-bag capacity, and I show this as an example of one of our customers who started off with a single chamber. As their sales grew, they added additional chambers. They didn't have to revalidate because the chambers are identical. And this tends to be a very effective way for smaller companies who are new to market to grow their sterilization capacity as they grow. So applications, we've talked about a lot of these before. We have a lot of business in custom devices, in implants, personal medical devices, or devices that are developed for a single patient are a very hot topic right now. And if you have to sterilize one device at a time, this tends to be the best process on the market. Again, we have the same broad compatibility. With the flexible chamber system, you have the added benefit that we're not pulling a deep vacuum, we're not injecting steam. So compared to traditional ethylene oxide, this is an even more delicate process. On the subject of devices with long lumens, we don't have hospital people here, but I've got to say that one of the major priorities for our company since 2015 has been endoscope sterilization. In 2015, as many of you know, there was a major CRE outbreak. Dozens of people were injured. About 25 patients were killed during this outbreak. And by interesting coincidence, we had a 510(k) submission in front of FDA that included duodenoscopes. And the FDA reviewers at that point in 2015 said, look, if you want this submission to go forward, you got to take out the duodenoscope claim. We've got this crisis right now. We don't know where the infections are coming from. You got to withdraw the duodenoscope claim. We did. The 510(k) went through, and we immediately began working with FDA on a validation protocol for duodenoscopes. Now, how many people here are familiar at all with the engineering of duodenoscopes? Okay, so it's basically an endoscope that has on the distal tip, on the end, an elevator mechanism that allows it to pivot 90 degrees. And that pivot point turns out to be exquisitely difficult to sterilize. And for 2 years, we came up with negotiated agreements with FDA on how to test these most difficult devices. And for any of you people who are validation nerds, and I know there's some in the audience, The typical method of validating an ethylene oxide cycle is to put a standard 10 to the 6 BI in the most difficult location to sterilize. In the case of duodenoscopes, FDA declared a duodenoscope should be considered a collection of devices. And for the first time, they required that we direct inoculate 8 different points on the scope and show that we could sterilize these 8 different points. Nobody had been asked to satisfy a sterilization challenge like this. We were the first to do it. We were the first company to obtain a terminal sterilization claim from FDA, and that's something that we're very proud of. Unhappily, we got that claim in December of 2019, and in January of 2020, something happened that kind of sucked all of the room out of the infection control space. We thought this was going to be national news, and COVID kind of distracted people for a few years. So we're in the process of reintroducing this system. Options for use. We've had a discussion already about the challenge of high-level disinfection versus sterilization. I serve on a number of AAMI committees, and I'm very glad to see other AAMI veterans here in the audience. There is a passionate debate going on these AAMI committees about sterilization, or is high-level disinfection good enough? And right now, AAMI is recommending the sterilization of scopes. FDA is recommending the sterilization of certain scopes. There are a lot of elements in the industry that are resisting this. And I don't think that hospitals are going to move to the sterilization of all scopes anytime soon. But there are certain particularly critical scopes, like duodenoscopes. There are certain patient types, patients who are immunocompromised, where it would be very nice to have a sterilization resource. And we've spoken to a number of hospitals who say, well, our big challenge is you have a patient that is infected with a multi-drug resistant organism, they have to be scoped, and you end up with a scope that has been infected with a highly pathogenic organism. Is high-level disinfection good enough? You look at the data, and I was discussing the research of Corey Olfstead, who's done amazing work on field study of infections at hospitals, and she identified a scope that was used on a patient with CRE. The scope went back into rotation. It went through 12 cycles of high-level disinfection before her research team got to it. And after 12 cycles of high-level disinfection, they were still able to recover CRE off that scope. I think there's a very strong argument to be made right now that ethylene oxide is an essential tool in hospitals. You may not be sterilizing all of your scopes, but when you need it, it is invaluable. Thank you very much. I'd like to leave everybody with a final note, and that is that there is an ethylene oxide resource available. Our systems start at about $65,000. They are inexpensive, they're easy to install, they're easy to operate, and at this point, I don't think there's any reason why hospitals that are performing critical surgeries don't have one amongst their list of decontamination technologies. And we've got a booth right outside, so if anyone would like to follow up with questions or see a demonstration of our sterilizer, please come on out. Thank you all.